The Treehouse Man is a 2D bullet hell game with some RPG elements. You are riding down a river on your boat, while trying to avoid the enemy's projectiles and dealing as much damage as possible with the 2 weapons your boat is equipped with. There is some strategy to choosing the loadout of your boat, like picking between a cannon that can deal a lot of damage to a single target, or one that can bounce between 2 targets with moderate damage. The companions you meet can also give you some passive and active abilities, but you can only take one of them at a time. The skill tree allows you to further customize your character and can have some interesting interactions with the weapons you choose. All these things aren't exactly deep, but deep enough to keep me entertained over the relatively short playtime. I'd recommend the game to people who enjoyed the combat system from Undertale, cause it seems to have been inspired by it. The art style is also pretty nice to look at. Mo Astray took some time to win me over, and that's mostly due to the unconventional movement system. Your player character is a jelly that doesn't control like you'd expect from a platformer game. Instead of walking and jumping, you throw yourself against walls and stick to them. Your character can actually walk normally, but jumping is much faster and most sections are built around that sticking mechanic. Walking is mostly used for small adjustments before a jump. Platforming felt awkward at first, because the jump doesn't have a set distance and height and is instead based on the trajectory and distance you yourself input. I eventually got over that awkwardness as I played more and started to enjoy the precision you could have with your jumps. It became even more enjoyable when the game introduced a new ability that gives you control mid-air. My favorite part of the game were definitely the boss fights, and it was a surprise that a game like this even has boss fights. The first boss, which is the only one I'm going to show, is not that interesting and just serves as an extended tutorial for the fights later in the game. Those are very engaging and will provide a decent challenge. Katana Zero is really cool. Everything from the combat to the UI just has so much style. What drew me in at first was the soundtrack, which stayed consistently amazing during the entire game, but I didn't expect the game to also have an interesting story. You are playing as the Dragon, a hired assassin set out to kill the targets of some unknown organization. Your time-altering abilities make you extremely deadly, and the mystery behind them was such a joy to uncover and served as the main hook of the story. The sad part is that the game is incredibly short, with only about 4 hours of playtime. I'd prefer a short and complete game over one that drags out too much, but Katana Zero is certainly short, but definitely not complete. The game ends on a cliffhanger, at a point of the story where you would expect a second act of some sort, where the events really kick off. But instead of the second act, you get the credits. The developers promised to deliver a free DLC that will continue the story, but it's still in development since it's going to be 3 times as big from what they initially planned for the DLC. In its current state, I can still recommend Katana Zero. Those 4 hours were of such high quality in every aspect that I didn't feel cheated when I saw the credits roll by. But the game could have had a much higher spot on this list if it were complete, since it perfectly fit my craving for games like Hotline Miami. Baba Is You is a game where you are Baba. Baba has to solve puzzles. And the rules of these puzzles are the text blocks that can be pushed around. This concept of manipulating the rules is easy to understand. If an object is stopped, then you can't move through it. The goal of a level is for you to be placed on the object that is win. This idea gets fully explored, and the puzzles become incredibly challenging with the introduction of new words. The best part about the game, however, is the difficulty curve and the way it teaches you things. Barber as You is very smart. Each level tries to teach you something new and also break false beliefs you might have. A good example of this that doesn't spoil too much is the 7th level called Grassyard. You might try to get the words flag and win out of that corner, but realize that there's not enough space to move them. Until you notice that there's no rule that indicates that the wall should stop you. You just assumed that it would because previous levels always had the rule wall is stop. Without it, the wall is just part of the background. The game never stops having these moments of realization, which made it the most engaging puzzle game I've ever played. But it can also get very frustrating when the level completely stumps you. This can get even more frustrating when the level only has a few text boxes you can interact with, and even after brute forcing every possible combination, you are no step closer to the solution. You might even start to question if the level is bugged, but what is actually happening is that you didn't have the necessary moment of realization yet. The levels aren't all meant to be completed in order. You just need to complete a certain amount so that you can move on to the next area, and the world map will open up so that you have many areas to work on. So you will likely find a number of levels that stump you, and that you can return to after you learn something significant. The nice music also helps to keep the frustration low. I like myself some Eastern European depression simulators like Stalker or Darkwood, and Pathologic 2 certainly delivered. Nothing is happy. Everything is ass. You are playing as the surgeon
Artemi Burach
and are coming to your hometown on your father's request. Things will go bad over the course of the game. And it's up to you to make the best out of it. People will get sick. But you have the potential to heal them. This is done by administering tinctures to locate where the sickness lies and then giving the patient the correct antibiotic. The problem is that each resource is limited. You yourself can get sick too, so who do you then give the medicine? The child that is in pain or the doctor that can heal? Medicine is not the only resource. Your character is hungry, thirsty and can get exhausted. It's a survival game, but one that has been carefully considered. Resource management isn't just a minor inconvenience like in most survival games. Instead, it is a driving force behind the narrative. Most resources can be gained by trading with the people around town. Different people will have and want different things. You need to figure out what's best to trade in and what's best to keep for yourself. Shops can sell you things, but prices will change every day depending on what's going on around town. The same goes for trading. People might have an overabundance of one item on one day, but less of it the next day. Trading is never simple. You need to think ahead of how to take care of a resource before your need for it comes. This is where it ties into the narrative, and where the game goes from being good to being brilliant. The resource management will constantly influence your decision making in the storylines that go on around town. Will you resort to stealing when times are getting tough? There is no guarantee that you will find something useful, but people will dislike you for it regardless. If your reputation is too low, then people will stop trading with you, and you would need to do good things for them to like you again. The most important resource that you have to manage is time. Time is always ticking down, and there's never enough of it. You need to prioritize and think ahead. You can't accomplish everything in a day. Another thing I like about the game is that you sometimes don't even feel like you're the protagonist. Characters have their own agency in this town, and events will happen regardless if you're there to witness them or not. A person might ask for your help, but you might value taking care of your own survival, treating a patient, or following one of the other narrative threads as more important, which could result in that person's death. This person is then forever cut out of your story. You won't find out what could have happened with them. Your own death also isn't just as simple as reloading a previous save file. Don't think you can save scum yourself out of consequences.
Here's some advice. Actually, the only advice that matters. Try not to die. Ever.
That Choices Matter tag on Steam is
Like never ever. At all. Or it'll turn bad. Not just for you, but for all of us.
Thank you, Mark. That Choices Matter tag on Steam is spot on. The game will push you to decisions where you will hate the game and yourself. It's amazing. Don't just take my word for it. See how the developers describe the intended difficulty. Almost unbearable seems really fitting for what I experienced. The option to change difficulty was only later added to the game, based on the negative feedback the game received, so you could tweak some things if all this pain doesn't sound like a fun time for you. But just listen to how happy you would make the devs by enabling the intended difficulty.
Oh, hello.
Certainly not.
Mordhau is a multiplayer medieval melee fighting game with a very complex combat system. You can input an attack from any direction to make horizontal swings, overhead slashes or anything in between.
Follow me.
You can parry an attack, which will give you a faster follow-up attack.
This way.
You can feint an attack to make the opponent parry early, so that you can get a hit in. Inputting an attack from the same direction as your opponent will make your attack chamber theirs. You can kick to disrupt an enemy's attack or to drain their stamina when they are guarding with a shield. You can accelerate and decelerate your attack to throw off the enemy's timing. Now the gameplay you've been watching so far doesn't reflect any of this, and that's because I found the best way to play this game. 1 spear, 2 bear traps, infinite amounts of fun. I usually don't troll in online multiplayer games out of an act of sportsmanship, but Mordhau is different because nobody's taking it serious outside of dual servers. It never feels like anyone is actually getting angry. And being on the receiving end is oftentimes the funniest part.
For the king!
I don't think so. Help! Help me! Help!
The amount of weird people you can meet in this game is fascinating.
Yes, sir. Certainly not.
In one moment you are passing a quarantine checkpoint while a caveman is trying to break it down. In another, you're watching 2 people play with a door. Everyone is willing to do something stupid for the amusement of people they've never met. It's just top quality banter each time I play this game. Like that one time where a player left the game to rename their Steam profile to The Gnome Hunter and just typed "prepare yourselves." The community truly is a blessing. People will often abandon their playstyle and just join in with whatever nonsense you are doing right now. The game didn't get the #1 spot on this list, but it's definitely the game that has made me laugh the most. Oh, and the combat, character customization and 64-player siege modes are also pretty fun, I guess. And my favorite game of 2019 is... I don't think anyone is surprised, but I really like From Software games. Sekiro is an absolute joy to play. The combat was satisfying from the very first fight. Your main focus in combat is the posture bar of your enemy. Deflecting an enemy's attack or attacking against their guard will knock them off balance until you have an opening to deal a death blow. You also have a posture bar that will open you up to an attack if you fail to deflect too many attacks. This creates an amazing feeling of a sword fight, where the aggression is in a constant back and forth between you and the enemy. The sound of two swords clashing will never be not satisfying. The gameplay is so fast and every mistake is harshly punished. It's exactly what I'm looking for in a game. The difficulty was just right for me and I can't recall a single moment where I felt cheated by the game. I always felt challenged but never frustrated. Boss fights are the best selling point for this game. Pretty much every boss is great and it's hard to pick anyone that was downright bad. Only a few that were less good. The final boss quickly became one of my all-time favorites. It's great that the game ends on such a high note. The game is a hit in pretty much every other aspect too. Visuals are great, music boils your blood whenever it's necessary. Voice acting is spot on. Story is interesting. Level design is wonderful and varied. The only downside I have is the replay value. With every other FromSoft game, I couldn't wait to finish the credits to start a new game and go through all of it again with a different build, or continue my current one in New Game Plus. In Sekiro I was pretty satisfied with my first playthrough, and so it became the FromSoftware game I have put the least amount of hours into. There is some variety with the skill trees and the different prosthetic tools you can use, but it wasn't enough for me to justify another playthrough. However, that first playthrough was so strong that I can still easily rank this as my favorite game of 2019. So yeah, 2019 was a bit of a slow year in terms of new games for me. The fact that I couldn't even make the usual top 10 format and had to just rank all the ones I actually played speaks of that. That gave me the chance to catch up on some other games though. Hollow Knight, Breath of the Wild, Yakuza 0 and Darkwood were among my favorites that I played that year. But 2020 is already shaping up to be a much more interesting year for me. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Hollow Knight Silksong, Monster Hunter World Iceborne and Elden Ring are all games that I'm looking forward to and that should come out this year. The year before I could only say the same thing about Sekiro, so it's already 3 more games that I can be excited for. Thank you for watching.